Okay, I thought I'd give y'all a few more expert opinions on the Patterson-Gimlin film. I thought I'd start with a fellow named Reuben J. Steindorf. A lot of people may not know who that is. He was involved in the Sasquatch Legend Meets Science documentary. He was also in Mysterious Encounters. This is what Dr. Jeff Meldrum wrote about Mr. Steindorf. Animator and computer-generated effects expert Reuben Steindorf of Vision Realm created a computer model of Patty, as the film subject has been nicknamed. Steindorf reconstructed Patty's skeletal anatomy from the ground up using reverse kinematics. Among other findings, Steindorf confirmed that the upper extremity was rather long compared to the lower. This ratio can be expressed as an intermembral index, IM. The intermembral index for the film subject was approximately 88. The average human IM is 71. Bigfoot Show Goes High-Tech on Discovery by Jerry Parlin of the Tribune staff, copyright La Crosse Tribune, Wisconsin. What is Bigfoot? Where is Bigfoot? Does he really exist, or is he just a hoax perpetrated by prankster Ray Wallace? Cue the spooky music and get ready to hear the story of how two local men got pulled into the legend of Bigfoot. Reuben Steindorf, president and senior animator at Vision Realm Entertainment in La Crosse, was hired to recreate forensic details for a show that will air at 8 tonight on the Discovery Channel. Steindorf, in turn, hired Bill Colt of Soundframe Studio to create music for the show. Sasquatch Legend Meets Science explores the legend of Bigfoot and asks, is this creature fact or fiction? Before working on the special, Steindorf was teetering toward the camp of the non-believers. Before I got involved, it was kind of like the Loch Ness Monster to me. Now I can't really say whether or not I believe in it. There's some pretty compelling evidence. How compelling? Well, more compelling than the 16-inch foot shaped carvings that the late Ray Wallace used in his version of Bigfoot. Wallace, who died last November, was exposed as a prankster by his family, but that doesn't mean the legend of Bigfoot will die. Die too, Steindorf said. There is still forensic study being done on Sasquatch, and some of it is pretty compelling, Steindorf said. They sent me the foot casts, and in defense of their foot casts, they weren't the wood-carved ones of Ray Wallace. Steindorf got much of his information and specifications from Jeffrey Meldrum from the Department of Biological Sciences at Idaho State University, who sent plaster foot casts to use in Steindorf's recreation of forensic evidence gathered in the search for Bigfoot. They're pretty huge, too, Steindorf said with a laugh. He began work in May and worked on it for 7.5 months. He's even in the special, Steindorf said. They came down here with a film crew and filmed us. They lit me like a vampire. The real work took place on long days and nights at the computer as Steindorf built Bigfoot in virtual world. They had me start from scratch with all their data. I rebuilt the skeletal frame of this alleged guy. And you better believe it was checked for error, Steindorf said. I had 14 to 15 people that were approving my stuff. This is pretty intense stuff. It's been scrutinized. Steindorf said exposure of the Wallace hoax will probably fuel interest in the Discovery special. It's kind of a mixed blessing. I'm just kind of going with the flow. It brings more publicity to the project, he said, so more people are likely to tune in tonight. One of them tuning in will likely be Bill Colt, film composer and audio engineer for Soundframe Studio. He provided background music for the special. I need 25 minutes worth of music, Steindorf told him. There really wasn't much direction, Colt said. It was pretty much make it spooky. I used a lot of flutes and chimey sounds. There were reverbs and a lot of things drifted off. So is Colt a believer? To be honest, I never did believe in Bigfoot, he said, but after working on the special, he's more open to the idea. Maybe there is something out there. There could be something out there, but I would never personally see it because I'm stuck in my music studio 24/7. Now, these are authoritative conclusions on the Patterson-Gimlin film. This is from the book Know the Sasquatch Bigfoot. It's various individuals who have weighed in on the film over the years. Now, the only one I will not include, because I've already read it for you guys, is the one by Dmitry Donskoy. But we start out with Dmitry Bayanov and Igor Burtsev. Over the last 50 years, the Patterson-Gimlin film has undergone rigorous examination by highly professional and dedicated people. The following are the conclusions reached by these people. Dmitry Bayanov and Igor Burtsev, Russian hominologists. The following is a reprint from the book America's Bigfoot, Fact Not Fiction by Dmitry Bayanov, Cryptologos, Moscow, Russia, 1997, pages 156 to 158. Conclusion. We have subjected the film to a systematic and multifaceted analysis, both in its technical and biological aspects. We have matched the evidence of the film against the other categories of evidence and have tested the subject with our three criteria of distinctiveness, consistency, and naturalness. The film has passed all our tests and scrutinies. This gives us ground to ask, who other than God or natural selection is sufficiently conversant with anatomy and biomechanics to design a body which is so perfectly harmonious in terms of structure and function? The Patterson-Gimlin film is an authentic documentary of a genuine female hominoid, popularly known as Sasquatch or Bigfoot, filmed in the Bluff Creek area of Northern California not later than October 1967. Until October 1967, we had lots of information on relict hominoids, but they remained inaccessible to the investigators' sense of vision. We were dealing then with the underwater part of the iceberg, as it were. October 1967 was the time when the fog cleared and the tip of the iceberg came into view. True, we still can't touch or smell this tip, and have to be content with viewing it in the film and photographs obtained from the film. But in this, we are not much different from the physician who studies a patient's bones without ever meeting the particular patient, just looking at the x-rays, or from the geologist who studies the geology of Mars by looking at the photographs of its surface. The difference is, of course, that in the geologist's case, seeing is believing, and besides, he has all the might of modern science at his disposal. Those photographs cost a couple of $1 billion, and nobody dares to treat them frivolously. The Sasquatch investigator, on the other hand, offered his photographic evidence to be studied by science for free, and the evidence was not taken seriously. According to Dr. Thorington of the Smithsonian, one should demand a clear demonstration that there is such a thing as Bigfoot before spending any time on the subject. If by a clear demonstration Dr. Thorington means a live Bigfoot be brought to his office, then it would be more of a sight for a layman than for the discriminating and analytical mind of a scientist. Relict hominoid research is of special, potentially unlimited value for science and mankind. Thanks to the progress of the research, we know today that man-like bipedal primates, thought long extinct, are still walking the earth in the second half of the 20th century. We also know how such a biped looks and how it walks, this knowledge being available now to anyone who wants to use their eyes. We are indebted for this breakthrough to the late Roger Patterson, who filmed a relict hominoid in Northern California in 1967, but who, to our sorrow, was not destined to witness the full triumph of his achievement. People readily believe photographs taken on the moon, but many do not believe the Patterson-Gimlin film taken here on Earth, showing something of incalculable value for science. They do not believe it because Patterson and his assistant Bob Gimlin were men with no academic authority to back their claim. And so Rene Dahinden stepped forth and traveled to Moscow with his own hard-earned money to have the film analyzed and appraised in a scientific manner. This has been done, and the result is presented in this paper. The marriage of Russian theory and American practice in hominology has proven to be happy and fertile. By joining forces, we have established not only the authenticity of the film, but also that the Sasquatch is part of the natural environment of North America, and its most precious part at that. May we offer this conclusion as our modest contribution. May we offer this conclusion as its most precious part, as our modest contribution to the cause of friendship and cooperation between the peoples of the Soviet Union and North America. The search for humanity's living roots is a cause for all mankind, and this makes us look forward to new international efforts in this intriguing investigation. The success of this research is a triumph of broad-mindedness over narrow-mindedness and serves as an example to the world at large, which seems to be in dire need of such a lesson. March 1977. Now, we also have a sidebar here. $100,000 reward for debunking the Patterson-Gimlin film. Over the years, many unsubstantiated and ridiculous claims have been made that the 1967 Patterson-Gimlin film of a Sasquatch is a fabrication. Similarly, irresponsible writers and superficially informed members of the scientific establishment have scoffed at the film. This film has been thoroughly analyzed by us at the International Center of Hominology in Moscow, Russia, and validated as showing a natural hominoid. We published our detailed analysis and conclusions in Dmitry Bayanov's book, America's Bigfoot Fact Not Fiction. Crypto Logos Publishers, 1997, now distributed by Hancock House Publishers, Surrey, British Columbia, Canada. To discredit film debunkers, we are offering a $100,000 reward to any of them who can successfully demonstrate to a panel of anthropologists and hominologists that the Patterson-Gimlin film is a fabrication showing a human in a costume. Our reward offer is based on the security of equipment, vehicles, and intellectual property of our organization. If a hoax claimant is serious and confident, and not just seeking media attention, he or she should apply in writing for the reward to International Center of Hominology, Crypto Logos, 12-3 Oseny Boulevard, Moscow, 12164, Russia. A failure to do so indicates that a claim is frivolous or unsupportable or both. Dmitry Bayanov, Science Director, Igor Burtsev, General Director, January 2005. This notice may be freely printed everywhere. And this is Dr. Donskoy's paper, which I've already read, and one of the best papers, I thought. Now here is Dr. Donald W. Grieve. This was his report on the film. Conclusions reached by Dr. D.W. Grieve, reader in biomechanics, Royal Free Hospital School of Medicine, London, England. The following is reprinted from the book The Search for Bigfoot, Monster, Myth, or Man by Peter Byrne. Pocket Books, New York, USA, 1976, pages 137 to 144. Report on the film of a proposed Sasquatch. The following report is based on a copy of a 16mm film taken by Roger Patterson on October 20th, 1967 at Bluff Creek, Northern California, which was made available to me by Renee Dehendon in December 1971. In addition to Patterson's footage, the film includes a sequence showing a human being, height 6 foot 5.5 inch, 196.9 centimeters, walking over the same terrain. I think he's referring to the Jim McLaren film from John Green, which was taken in June 1968. The main purpose in analyzing the Patterson-Gimlin film was to establish the extent to which the creature's gait resembled or differed from human gait. The basis for comparison were measurements of stride, length, time of leg swing, speed of walking, and the angular movements of the lower limb. Parameters that are known for man at particular speeds of walking. Published data refer to humans with light footwear or none. Walking on hard, level ground. In part of the film, the creature is seen walking at a steady speed through a clearing of level ground. It is data from this sequence that has been used for purposes of comparison with the human pattern. Later parts of the film show an almost full posterior view, which permits some comparisons to be made between its body breadth and that of humans. The film has several drawbacks for purposes of quantitative analysis. The unstable handheld camera gave rise to intermittent frame blurring. Lighting conditions and the foliage in the background and make it difficult to establish accurate outlines of the trunk and limbs even in unblurred frames. The subject is walking obliquely across the field of view in that part of the film in which it is most clearly visible. The feet are not sufficiently visible to make useful statements about the ankle movements. Most importantly of all, no information is available as to framing speed used. Body shape and size. Careful matching and superposition of images of the so-called Sasquatch and human film sequences yield an estimated standing height for the subject of not more than 6 foot 5 inches / 1.96 millimeters or meters. This specimen lies therefore within the human range, although at its upper limits. Accurate measurements are impossible regarding features that fall within the body outline. Examination of several frames leads to the conclusion that the height of the hip joint, the gluteal fold, and the fingertips are in similar proportions to the standing height, as those found in humans. The shoulder height at the acromion appears slightly greater relative to the standing height, 0.871, than in humans, 0.821. Both the shoulder width and the hip width appear proportionately greater in the subject creature than in man, 0.341 instead of 0.261 and 0.231 instead of 0.191 respectively. If we argue that the subject has similar vertical proportions to man, ignoring the higher shoulders, and has breadths and circumferences about 25% greater proportionately, then the weight is likely to be 50 to 60% greater in the subject than in a man of the same height. The additional shoulder height and the unknown correction that should be allowed for the presence of hair will have opposite effects upon an estimate of weight. Earlier comments that this specimen was just under 7 feet in height and extremely heavy seem rather extravagant. The present analysis suggests that Sasquatch was 6 foot 5 inches, 1.96 meters in height, with a weight of about 280 pounds, 127 kilograms, and a foot length mean of 4 observations of about 13.3 inches, 34 centimeters. Timing of the gait. Because the framing speed is unknown, the timing of the various phases of the gait was done in terms of the numbers of frames. 5 independent estimates of the complete cycle time were made from right toe off, left toe off, right foot passing left, left foot passing right, and left heel strike respectively, giving complete cycle time 22.5 frames, range 21.5 to 23.5. 4 independent estimates of the swing phase or single support phase for the contralateral limb from toe off to heel strike gave swing phase or single support equals 8.5 frames, same in each case. The above therefore indicates a total period of support of 14 frames and periods of double support, both feet on the ground, of 2.75 frames. A minimum uncertainty of plus 0.5 frames may be assumed. Stride length. The film provides an oblique view and no clues exist that can lead to an accurate measurement of the obliquity of the direction of walk, which was judged to be not less than 20 degrees and not more than 35 degrees to the image plane of the camera. The obliquity gives rise to an apparent grouping of left and right foot placements, which could in reality have been symmetrical with respect to distance in the line of progression. The distance on the film between successive placements of the left foot was 1.20 times the standing height. If an obliquity of 27 degrees is assumed, a stride length of 1.34 times the standing height is obtained. The corresponding values in modern man for 20 degrees and 35 degrees obliquity are 1.27 and 1.46 respectively. A complete set of tracings of the subject were made, and in every case when the limb outlines were sufficiently clear, a construction of the axes of the thigh and shank were made. The angles of the segments to the vertical were measured as they appeared on the film. Because of the obliquity of the walk to the image plane of the camera, assumed to be 27 degrees, the actual angles of the limb segments to the vertical and the sagittal plane were computed by dividing the tangent of the apparent angles by the cosine of 27 degrees. This gave the tangent of the desired angle in each case, from which the actual thigh and shank angles were obtained. The knee angle was obtained as the difference between the thigh and shank angles. A summary of the observations is given on the table shown at left. The pattern of movement, notably the 30 degrees of knee flexion following heel strike, the hip extension during support that produces a thigh angle of 30 degrees behind the vertical, the large total thigh excursion of 61 degrees, and the considerable 46 degree knee flexion following toe off are features very similar to those for humans walking at high speed. Under these conditions, humans would have a stride length of 1.2 times stature or more, a time of swing of about 0.35 seconds, and a speed of swing of about 1.5 times stature per second. Conclusions. The unknown framing speed is crucial to the interpretation of the data. It is likely that the filming was done at either 16, 18, or 24 frames per second, and each possibility is considered below. If 16 FPS is assumed, the cycle time and the time of swing are in a typical human combination, but much longer in duration than one would expect from the stride and the pattern of limb movement. It is as if a human were executing a high-speed pattern in slow motion. It is very unlikely that more massive limbs would account for such a combination of variables. If the framing speed was indeed 16 FPS, it would be reasonable to conclude that the metabolic cost of locomotion was unnecessarily high per unit distance, or that the neuromuscular system was very different to that in humans. With these considerations in mind, it seems unlikely that the film was taken at 16 frames per second. Similar conclusions apply to the combination of variables if we assume 18 frames per second. In both cases, a human would exhibit very little knee flexion following heel strike and little further knee flexion following toe off at these times of cycle and swing. It is pertinent that the subject has similar linear proportions to man and therefore would be unlikely to exhibit a totally different pattern of gait unless the intrinsic properties of the limb muscles or the nervous system were greatly different to that in man. If the film was taken at 24 frames per second, Sasquatch walked with a gait pattern very similar in most respects to a man walking at high speed. Cycle time is slightly greater than expected, and the hip joint appears to be more flexible in extension than one would expect in man. If the framing speed were higher than 24 frames per second, the similarity to man's gait is even more striking. My subjective impressions have oscillated between total acceptance of the Sasquatch on the grounds that the film would be difficult to fake to one of irrational rejection based on an emotional response to the possibility that the Sasquatch actually exists. This seems worth stating because others have reacted similarly to the film. The possibility of a very clever fake cannot be ruled out on the evidence of the film. A man could have sufficient height and suitable proportions to mimic the longitudinal dimensions of the Sasquatch. The shoulder breadth, however, would be difficult to achieve without giving an unnatural appearance to the arm swing and shoulder contours. The possibility of fakery is ruled out if the speed of the film was 16 or 18 frames per second. In these conditions, a normal human being could not duplicate the observed pattern, which would suggest that the Sasquatch must possess a very different locomotor system to that of man. D.W. Grieve, M.Sc., Ph.D., Reader in Biomechanics, Royal Free Hospital School of Medicine, London. Conclusions reached by the North American Science Institute, NASI. Under the direction of Jeff Glickman, a certified forensic examiner, North American Science Institute, NASI, performed an intensive computer analysis on the Patterson-Gimlin film over a period of 3 years. At the same time, the Institute carried on with general Bigfoot research previously performed by the Bigfoot Research Project. In June 1998, Mr. Glickman issued a research report entitled Toward a Resolution of the Bigfoot Phenomenon. The report's main findings applicable to the Patterson-Gimlin film are summarized as follows. Number 1. Measurements of the creature. Height, 7 foot 3.5 inches, 2.2 meters. Waist, 81.3 inches, 2.1 meters. Chest, 83 inches, 2.11 meters. Weight, 1,957 pounds. 886.5 kilograms. Length of arms, 43 inches, 1.1 meters. Length of legs, 40 inches, 1.202 meters. See note below on height/weight. Number 2, the length of the creature's arms is virtually beyond human standards, possibly occurring in 1 out of 52.5 million people. Number 3, the shortness of the creature's legs is unusual by human standards, possibly occurring in 1 out of 1,000 people. Number 4, nothing was found indicating that the creature was a man in a costume, i.e. no seam or interfaces. Number 5, hand movement indicates flexible hands. This condition implies that the arm would have to support flexion in the hands. An artificial arm with hand movement ability was probably beyond the technology available in 1967. Number 6, the Russian finding on the similarity between the foot casts and the creature's foot was confirmed. Number 7, the preliminary findings indicate that the forward motion part of the creature's walking pattern could not be duplicated by a human being. Number 8, rippling of the creature's flesh or fat on its right side was observed, indicating that a costume is highly improbable. Number 9, the creature's feet undergo flexion like a real foot. This finding eliminates the possibility of fabricated solid foot apparatus. It also implies that the leg would have to support flexion in the foot. An artificial leg with foot movement ability was probably beyond the technology available in 1967. Number 10, the appearance and sophistication of the creature's musculature are beyond costumes used in the entertainment industry. Number 11, non-uniformity in hair texture, length, and coloration is inconsistent with sophisticated costumes used in the entertainment industry. Mr. Glickman closes his scientific findings with the following statement. Despite 3 years of rigorous examination by the author, the Patterson-Gimlin film cannot be demonstrated to be a forgery at this time. Personally, I believe Mr. Glickman did an excellent job. The main criticism voiced by many Bigfoot researchers was his estimate of the creature's weight. Nevertheless, while we have generally settled on a much lesser figure than his estimate, 1,957 pounds or 886.5 kilograms, Mr. Glickman stands firm on his figure. Unfortunately, the NASA report did little or nothing to heighten the credibility of the creature in the eyes of the general scientific community. Full recognition by science demands that there be a body, a part of a body, or at least bones. This issue has raised a lot of controversy and has divided researchers on the question as to our right to kill one of the creatures. Up to this point in time, those people who claimed that they had the opportunity to shoot a Sasquatch did not do so because the creature looked too human. Note on height and weight. The actual walking height of the creature in the film has been the subject of considerable controversy. The late Dr. Grover Krantz arrived at a maximum walking height of 72 inches, 1.83 meters. John Green, 80 inches, 2.3 meters. Dmitry Bainov and Igor Burtsev, about 78 inches, 1.98 meters. Yvonne Leclerc, 75.5 inches, 1.92 meters. Jeff Glickman, 87.5 inches, 2.22 meters. Dr. Donald W. Green, 77 inches, 1.96 meters. Dr. Esteban Sarmiento, just under 6 feet, 1.83 meters. In all cases, to determine the height of the creature, if it was standing fully erect, we must add something. As the foregoing conclusions are based on different film frames, then the specific amount added will differ. Dr. Krantz estimates that the final figure can be reasonably determined by adding between 8% and 8.5% to the walking height. The weight of the creature at 87.5 inches, 2.2 meters nasty, is now more conservatively estimated by Dr. Henrik Fehrenbach at 542 pounds, 245.5 kilograms. However, Dr. Sarmiento places it between 190 and 240 pounds, 86.1 to 108.7 kilograms. Whatever the case, the creature film was quite tall and massive. The illustration shown on the right is by Yvonne Leclerc, who is seen in the comparison. Conclusions reached by Dr. Grover S. Krantz, anthropologist at Washington State University. The following is from Bigfoot Sasquatch Evidence by Dr. Krantz, Hancock House Publishers, 1999, pages 122 to 124. Current status. No matter how the Patterson-Gimlin film is analyzed, its legitimacy has been repeatedly supported. The size and shape of the body cannot be duplicated by a man. Its weight and movements correspond with each other and equally rule out a human subject. Its anatomical details are just too good. The world's best animators could not match it as of the year 1969, and the supposed faker died rather than make another movie. In spite of all this and much more, the scientific establishment has not accepted the film as evidence of the proposed species. There are several reasons for this reluctance that are worthy of some discussion. Most of the analyses of the film and its background were made by laymen. Their studies and conclusions were published in popular magazines and books, not scientific journals. Most of these investigators did not know how to write a scientific paper or how to get one published. If they had submitted journal articles, these probably would have been rejected simply because the subject was not taken seriously by the editors, no matter how well the articles may have been written. Thus, the potentially concerned scientists were simply unaware of the great quantity and quality of evidence. Most of them had heard about the movie, but were reluctant to look into it until someone else verified it. Since they all took this attitude, preferring not to risk making themselves look foolish, nothing much ever happened. Parsons was the first movie film ever produced purporting to show a Sasquatch in the wild. Since that time, many more films have appeared. I have seen 8 of them, and they are all fakes. A few of the most absurd of these are available on a video cassette. One other shows a distant, non-moving object that could be a Sasquatch, but there is no way to find out for sure. Given that such faking exists now, it is not surprising that scientific interest in supposed Sasquatch movies is even less today than it was back in 1967. In many popular publications about the Sasquatch, there are claimed connections with the truly paranormal, and even fewer scientists want to deal with this. The Lunatic Fringe has the Sasquatch moving through space-time warps, running in UFOs, making telepathic connections, showing superior intelligence, and the like. All of these enthusiasts try to capitalize on anything new that comes out on the subject. Most of them will eagerly latch on to any scientist who shows an interest and attempt to lead him/her down their own garden path. It is tantamount to academic suicide to become associated with any of these people. Finally, and most important, there is the absence of any definitive proof that the Sasquatches exist at all. If this had been a known species, the Patterson-Gimlin film would have been accepted without question. But without the clear proof that biologists are willing to accept, a strip of film is of little persuasive value. Of course, a film like this would have been accepted as fairly good evidence for a new species of cat or skunk. But even then, the type specimen would still have to be collected to make it official. For something so unexpected, at least to science, as a Sasquatch, the degree of proof that is required rises proportionately. What is said here about scientific ignorance regarding the Patterson-Gimlin film is equally true for the footprint evidence and the testimony of eyewitnesses. None of this is normally published in scientific journals. Hoaxes do occur, and the lunatic fringe is all over the place. I don't know of a single scientist who has firmly denied the existence of the Sasquatch on the basis of reasonable study of the evidence. Instead of this, most scientists deny it because, to the best of their knowledge, there is no substantial body of evidence that can be taken seriously. Some of the Russian investigators, not part of their scientific establishment, have pushed hard for further study of the Patterson-Gimlin film. Their hope is that such work might establish the existence of these creatures without the necessity of collecting a specimen directly. I wish this were true. Scientific knowledge of the mechanics of bodily motion certainly has advanced in the last 20 years since Donskoy and Grieve studied the film. There are experts in sports, medicine, anatomy, athletics, running shoe design, special effects, and prosthetics who could probably make informed judgments on this film. Dmitry Bayanov has urged me and others to pursue these efforts, but what efforts have been made along this line have produced no useful results. I can't afford another full round of expert chasing after my episode with dermal ridges, but at least I have tried. Perhaps someone else will pursue this more diligently in the future. It is not likely that further study of the film can extract any more information than I already have, but it would make an enormous difference if a neutral expert with more appropriate credentials could just confirm what has been presented here. Note, Mr. J. Glickman, a neutral expert with appropriate credentials, did essentially confirm Dr. Prince's findings as previously presented. Nasty conclusions. The only contentious issues were the creature's height and weight calculated by Glickman. Dr. Esteban Sarmiento. Forward to the following report. In the course of events, Dr. Esteban Sarmiento was consulted on the Skookum cast. He subsequently performed an analysis on the Patterson-Gimlin film and provided a report. Although his report is not consistent with the findings previously presented, Dr. Sarmiento is a highly qualified and world-renowned professional in physical anthropology. As such, I am pleased to present his findings. If some researchers do not agree with his conclusions, then they need to provide proof and convince Dr. Sarmiento that he is not correct. Conclusions reached by Dr. Esteban Sarmiento, anthropologist, research associate, Mammalogy, American Museum of Natural History, New York. Opening comments. Here is a summary of my Patterson-Gimlin Bigfoot film analysis. I have worked with all the great apes in the wild and have nearly 25 years experience doing so. My expertise is in primate functional anatomy, thus the analysis I provide is in what I am an expert in. As regards the film, I am certain of all the data based on length measurements, although if I intended to publish these, I would remeasure them many times to get accurate estimates as to the possible degree of error. The data summarized below that is dependent on film speed I am less certain of. However, none of it would affect my conclusions or taxonomic assessment. I was unable to find conclusive evidence from the film as to whether the filmed individual is real or is a human dressed in an ape suit. I did find some inconsistencies in appearance and behavior that to some might suggest a fake, i.e. a human dressed in an ape suit, but nothing that conclusively shows that this is the case, I think, based on the film. It will be difficult for anyone to prove conclusively if this is a real or a fake. At the least, it will prove very costly or time-consuming to do so. Patterson-Gimlin film analysis. Speed of film. Verification by the individuals who took the film and or knowledge of the camera type/brand they used would be the surest way to ascertain film speed. I looked for falling leaves or movement of debris that could be used to estimate frames per second, but saw none that was clear enough to use for this purpose. Excuse me. Human trembling has an average frequency. One of the supposed causes of camera movement, and likely the only cause, once the camera is stabilized, that when multiplied by length of displacement's blur on the original movie frame or multiplied by the number of movie frames that motion in one direction appears on, can be used to estimate film speed. I had no means to do this. I therefore took the given video speed at the beginning of the film. I suppose this was the 16 to 18 frames per second, more or less a standard speed, claimed by the professional animator K.W. Council as the actual film speed. I did not test this claimed speed, but believe it is reasonable. Size of animal. Verification of camera used in measurements of trees, trunks, and stones around and through which Bigfoot walked would be the most accurate way of arriving at Bigfoot size. An accurate size estimate would entail, number 1, knowledge of camera lens used, e.g. 20mm, 50mm, 100mm, etc. Number 2, returning to the area to measure landmarks, big stones or tree trunks that were present when the film was taken. And number 3, measuring the size of these landmarks on each frame relative to that of Bigfoot. Given that the creature's foot length is known from casts of its footprints, its size can also be estimated using these proportions, and from stride length measurements. I lacked data to use any of these methods. I did not know footprint length, stride length, and did not return to the original locality. I could only ascertain Bigfoot's size based on the relationship between lower limb length and stride frequency, with lower limb length being the unknown variable. This is accurate as long as film speed is accurate, and the animal has more or less the same proportions as humans. Napier's claim, 1973, that step length is inconsistent with track size can only be shown if animal size is verified. See also kinematics. Bigfoot's appearance. Aside from its human-like characters, Bigfoot has a number of characters that are odd. The plantar surface of the feet is decidedly pale, but the palm of the hand seems to be dark. There is no animal I know of in which plantar sole differs so drastically in color from the palm. Moreover, the sides, up to an inch or more from the base, of the sole are devoid of hair. Normally, one would expect the hair to grow down to the level of the substrate, ground, where wear would keep it at ground length. Such hair growth around the feet is seen in all apes and monkeys, and no ape or monkey that I know of shows the hair pattern seen around Bigfoot's sole. The light-colored sole with an apparent high hairline around it gives the impression of footwear. I found no evidence that the light-colored soles were the result of film overexposure, since they were light-colored even in frames where the above ankle and leg were decidedly dark. The gluteals, although large, failed to show a human-like cleft or crack. Gluteal size appears too large not to be associated with a large visible cleft. As such, it is hard to imagine how hair alone would hide this cleft. I was unable to see genitals of any type, male or female. There is also no visible sexual swelling, as may occur in females with a true estrous cycle. What appear to be breasts indicates this individual is probably a female. The lack of hip sway during walking makes the walk of the Bigfoot individual appear more like a human male than a human female. The face does not seem to have mouth, nose, or eyes, but this is likely the result of film resolution. The supposed herniated rectus femoris M seems enormous in proportion to the thigh and is in the position to be the vastus lateralis. Overall Bigfoot behavior. Bigfoot shows behavior that is strange for a wild mammal that has been surprised by humans and recognizes humans are observing it. From my experience with mammals, most mammals freeze in place when they first sight a human and try to make eye contact when they sense the observer has sighted it. There are actually studies published on this. For example, it has been shown that mammals that make eye contact are less likely to be chased down and eaten by lions. Apes attempt to hide behind foliage or other natural obstacles and try to get a direct look at the observer. They move only if the observer makes a direct and continuous approach to it. When they move very quickly, crashing through the forest and do not look back. Great apes often defecate prior to or at the beginning of their escape. An ape of this size, unfamiliar with humans, if it felt trapped, would probably charge a human. In this regard, Bigfoot's walk, which is deliberate by no means a hectic escape, is peculiar. I have never seen any ape that is unhabituated allow itself to be filmed for such a long sequence. Probably the most peculiar character is that Bigfoot does not attempt to hide behind a natural obstacle, but keeps methodically plodding along at the same pace, regardless of distance to observers. Moreover, it casually turns around to look back at the observers. I was reminded of a walking race in which the lead runner turns around to see how far his competition is behind it. As such, it would seem that this individual was very familiar with humans, or more specifically with the people shooting the film. It was clearly not very curious about their presence or fully frightened by them. Its movements leave no doubt that this animal is fully terrestrial and has compromised most types of arboreal behaviors. Bigfoot proportions. And let's see if I can get this. These are clear from the film. I measured these straight from a 50-inch TV screen, pausing the video. External measurements, not to be confused with bone measurements, of relative lengths are all done from lateral camera shots and are after methods described by Schultz, 1956. Measures of relative diameters were averaged from relative diameters of both lateral and frontal, anterior or posterior camera shots. Bigfoot has lower limbs that are approximately 1.2 times longer than upper limbs and long relative to trunk length, 1.7 times. Upper limbs are nearly 1.5 times trunk length. Hip plus lower back lumbar column length is slightly less than thoracic length, 0.83 times. Thigh length is 1.2 leg length, and arm length is approximately 1.25 forearm length. Lower limb length is about 3.5 times foot length, and upper limb length is approximately 4 times hand length. Thigh circumference is approximately 1.6 times arm circumference. Bigfoot's chest girth at 1.75 is less than my own at 1.8, and probably that of many professional athletes, but larger than the human average, 1.6. Chest girth is given as trunk circumference divided by trunk length. I calculated chest circumference as anterior posterior chest diameter plus medial-lateral chest diameter times pi 2. I measured above the pendulous portion of Bigfoot's breasts. In my calculation, pi was taken as equal to 3.142. In all of the above relative values, Bigfoot is well within the human range and differs markedly from any living ape and the Australopithecine fossils. Bigfoot range of joint motion and plane of segment movement. Ignoring speed for the moment and concentrating only on plane of segment movement and range of joint motion, Bigfoot shows striking similarities to humans. Principally, thigh and leg segment motion is in the plane of forward movement, with the knee joint axis perpendicular to forward movement. Moreover, there is hip drop on the lower limb swing phase. Although apparently more bent knee than humans at mid-stance of the bipedal cycle, Bigfoot shows the ability to extend the knee joint at end of bipedal swing phase, just prior to heel strike, and to extend the hip joint at the end of bipedal stance phase. Bigfoot clearly shows heel strike at the initiation of the stance phase, and what must be a distinct toe off at the end of stance phase. The latter are both human hallmarks. Bigfoot's toe off is associated with plantar foot flexion, clearly seen in the film, and must have also been associated, given the hip and knee joint position, with hyperextended metatarsal phalangeal postures, although the latter cannot be verified from film. Upper limb movement is typically human. The retractive motion opposite to forward movement phase is marked by elbow extension, with the most extended postures occurring at the end of the phase. The protractive swing phase, motion in same direction as forward movement, is marked by elbow flexion, with the greatest flexion occurring at the end of the phase. Moreover, elbow and shoulder flexion is more marked than elbow and shoulder extension. Upper limb segments movements are in somewhat different planes than forward movement, progressing from anteromedial to posterolateral. Upper limb movement is diagonally coupled to lower limb movement. In both these respects, i.e. upper limb coupling and plane of segment movement, Bigfoot is similar to humans. More surprisingly, despite what appears to be a considerable neck muscle mass, a large bulge in the area of the trapezius M, Bigfoot shows an extremely mobile head. The head is able to actually rotate nearly 90 degrees effortlessly and also with considerable velocity. This head movement is unique to humans when compared to living apes and is associated with a well-balanced head and a specific neck curvature. The Bigfoot trunk also has a considerable degree of axial rotation, and the animal is able to turn its upper trunk around to look backwards without breaking stride. Most of the axial trunk rotation appears to be occurring between thorax and lower back, as it does in humans. I did not measure the range of joint motion since I felt, given the quality of the film, the accuracy from actual measurements would not be that different from my visual estimates, and the former is considerably more labor intensive. The only difference that I could see between Bigfoot and humans in posture and movements was that his trunk was tilted slightly more forward. Humans achieve these trunk postures when compensating for extra weight, especially from a backpack which shifts overall center of gravity posteriorly. Vertical displacements of lower limb segments are greater than is normal for humans walking on level surfaces, but is consistent with humans walking on uneven substrates with varying substrate footing. Kinematics of Bigfoot limb segment movement and body size. As long as the indicated film speed is correct, Bigfoot's speed of upper and lower limb segment movement provides an indication of Bigfoot's lower limb length. Considering Bigfoot's bipedality is similar to humans, Grieve and Gear's 1966 formula for step frequency, relative time of swing, stride length, and stature can be used to predict Bigfoot's height, stature, and lower limb length. My calculations show Bigfoot was just under 6 foot in height, with an approximate error between 5'8" and 6'3". Given this height and its proportions, I estimate Bigfoot's weight to be between 190 and 240 pounds, well within the human range and considerably below that of many professional football and basketball players who show slower swing times. If the film was shot at a slower speed than 16 to 18 frames a second, Bigfoot would be taller. If shot at a higher speed, Bigfoot would be shorter. If Bigfoot has shorter lower limbs relative to its height than humans, Bigfoot would be taller, and if the converse were true, he would be shorter than estimated. Bigfoot taxonomy. Covered in hair and possessing what appear to be mammary glands, Bigfoot is no doubt a mammal. Complete disassociation of the arm and length from the thigh from the trunk, plantigrade foot postures and what appear to be five-fingered hands and feet without claws, albeit the latter was not certain on the hands and could only be verified on the feet based on footprints. Proportions and segment movement, especially as regards neck, foot, and knee, are so human-like that this form, unless shown otherwise, must be classified within the human genus Homo. Presence of pendulous inflated breasts without any signs of a nursing infant or late-term pregnancy indicates the breasts are continuously enlarged as in humans. Gluteals are also enlarged as in humans. Only through biomolecular studies and or dissection of living or cadaver specimens and proof of parallelisms could this individual be called anything but Homo. In this regard, I strongly disagree with KW Council that this individual is not in the genus Homo. Bigfoot's movement, especially its neck and trunk movement, indicate it is more or as closely related to modern humans as some of the fossil taxa within the genus Homo. March 4, 2002. Although this report was completed and provided by Dr. Sarmiento to another person on this date, it was not provided to me until January 9, 2005. As soon as I received it, I worked with Dr. Sarmiento on general formatting and editing, and then provided it to major Sasquatch researchers. My first book, Meet the Sasquatch, was already in print at that time, so I could not include the report. Inclusion of this in this book is the first major publication of the report, CLM. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. I certainly enjoyed it, bringing it to you guys. And these are. Now, I realize Sarmiento's report is a little bit contrary to the others, but I felt it important to include it anyway. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this, and we will catch you guys later. Y'all be good or be good at it.